Job chapter 12, verse 1 onwards. Then Job replied, "Doubtless you are the people, and wisdom will die with you." Sarcastic statement, and a very good sarcastic statement. All your answers and your wisdom will die with you. You are the people, and it seems you have a patent on wisdom, but wisdom will die with you. They were talking as if Job were a simpleton and that they had all the answers to life and living. Now, verse 3. But I have a mind as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Who does not know all these things? Who does not know all these things? In one simple statement, he dismisses all the previous chapters of this book. All their arguments, Job concludes, who does not know these things? Job knows as much as they know. The problem is that they have not spoken to the situation as it really is. They haven't seen situation in its perspective. There is something important in these discourses that I want to call to your attention as you can be watching for it. Instead of leading Job to self-judgment, the three friends only minister to a spirit of self-vindication in Job. In other words, they make an attack on Job, which forces him to come back with a defense of himself. You notice the next few verses, Job chapter 12, verse 4. They brought in experience and tradition and legality, but they didn't bring in truth. Verse 4, I have become a laughingstock to my friends, though I called upon God, and he answered, a mere laughingstock. Though righteous and blameless. Notice again, though I am righteous and blameless, men at ease have contempt for misfortune, as the fate of those whose feet are slipping. Job is a very sick man, and he's standing up to these three men. You can almost visualize them standing and being so animated around Job. Job tells them, you men are in a comfortable position and you are able to give advice to me, but I am slipping, I'm falling, and you have no word for me at all. For the rest of the chapter, Job goes on to say that his friends do not have such superior wisdom that they pretend to have. They are not the only ones who know about God. Job also knows about the power of God in the affairs of men. Job now is bitter, sarcastic. His friends are not helping him at all, and he longs to appeal to God directly. Verses 1 and 2 of Job 13. My eyes have seen all this. My ears have heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you. He knows all the truths which his friends have expounded to him. He says, my eyes have seen all this, my ears have heard, and I'm not inferior to you. They haven't told him anything new and something that he had not known before. And therefore it is status quo. They have not helped Job at all. Verse 3 now. But I desire to speak to the Almighty, to argue my case with God. Job would like to bypass his friends and appeal to God directly. In the ultimate analysis, it's between God and him, so he wants to reason with God. Oh, if only someone had been there to tell Job about grace, about the mercy of God, and how God wanted to help Job in the midst of all his pain. Verse 4, you, however, smear me with lies. You are worthless physicians, all of you. Miserable comforters, title number 1. Worthless physicians, title number 2. He repeats that his friends have not been able to diagnose his case, and they are not helping him at all. They are like a doctor who has a patient with diabetes and says the cure would be to take his lungs out. They have missed the whole point. Verse 5, if only you would be altogether silent, for you that would be wisdom. That's what Solomon says in Proverbs. Even if a fool keeps quiet, he would be thought of as wise. He tells them that the best thing for them to do would be to keep quiet. He tells them that that would be smarter than what they were saying. Verse 6. Hear now my argument. Listen to the plea of my lips. Will you speak wickedly on God's behalf? Will you speak deceitfully for him? He really speaks back to them. He says that when they are accusing him of committing some awful sin and that God is judging him, they are talking deceitfully for God. They are not representing God as they should. Job, my friend, Job knows that they are not God's direct representatives. They could have helped Job if they had brought him to the place where he could have seen himself as he really was. Instead, they put him on the defense. As a result, he's actually making a good case for himself. All of this makes it look bad for God. It looks as if God is to blame in all this. Friends, it is so important, vitally important, the way we counsel people. Let people see themselves from the perspective of God, not from our tainted, biased perspectives and prejudices. Friends, just open people up before God's holiness, and that will change people. The problem is sometimes we tend to play God to our own ruination. Verse 8. Will you show him partially? Will you argue the case for God? Would it turn out well if he examined you? Could you deceive him as you might deceive men? He would surely rebuke you if you secretly showed partiality. Job says that God is going to judge them for misrepresenting him. Verse 11. Would not his splendor terrify you? Would not the dread of him fall on you? Your maxims are proverbs of ashes. Your defenses are defenses of clay. Keep silent. Let me speak. Then let come to me what may. Why do I put myself in jeopardy and take my life in my hands? Your maxims are proverbs of ashes. Why do I put myself in jeopardy? In the midst of all this, friends, the faith of Job stands inviolate. He has experienced the onslaught of his three friends, who by now have actually become strangers to him, as we shall see. Verse 15, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. I will surely defend my ways to his face. Even if God were to stab me, I will not turn to anyone else but God himself. This is Job's great statement of faith. Job's friends, you see, are accusing him of some gross secret sin against God, such as immorality, dishonesty, or some other sin of the flesh. Job is not guilty of anything like this, but here we begin to see the root of his problem. Job says that he will go into the presence of God and defend himself before God's justice. My friend, the minute you go into the presence of God and start defending yourself, you will lose your case. When you stand before God, you can only plead guilty because he knows you. No one can maintain a case before God. The thing to do is to go into God's presence and plead guilty and cast yourself upon the mercy of God's grace. You will find that God has a mercy seat in heaven. It is a mercy seat because the blood of Jesus Christ is on it. Jesus paid the penalty, the price for our sin. Verse 16, indeed, this will turn out for my deliverance, for no godless man would dare come before him. Friends, there are glimmers of light that break through on this man's soul. He says, he shall be my salvation. By the way, notice that it is the teaching of the Old Testament as well as the New. that God is our salvation. David held on to this fact because David committed that awful sin. Of course, he didn't live in sin, but he needed a savior. He wrote in Psalm 62 and verse 2, He only is my rock. He only is my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be moved. Salvation is not like a coin that you carry around in your pocket that you might lose. Salvation is a rock. Salvation is God. Today, salvation is Jesus Christ. You either have him or you don't have him. Verse 17 now of chapter 13. Listen carefully to my words. Let your ears take in what I say. Job says, listen to me. Verse 18. Now that I have prepared my case, I know I will be vindicated. Job thinks he has a good case even before the transcendent God. He says that he knows he shall be justified. But he does not claim that on the grounds that someone else obtained that justification for him. Now you notice verse 19. Can anyone bring charges against me? If so, I will be silent and die. Interesting. At the beginning, Job said that he wanted to die. He wished he had never been born. Now he says that if he holds his tongue, he will die. I will be silent and die. All right, Job, if you want to die, why don't you quit talking? You will notice he doesn't do that. He's going to talk. He's not going to be silent. This is the way of little men. They say a lot but do very little. Verse 20. Only grant me these two things, O God, and then I will not hide from you. Withdraw your hand far from me and stop fighting me with your terrors. Job is a frightened man. Now you notice verse 22. Then summon me and I will answer. Let me speak and you reply. He's telling God what to do. I'm afraid many of us are like this. We give God instructions. Summon me, I will answer. Let me speak and you reply. I hear so many people say that they have unanswered prayers. No, there is no such thing like unanswered prayers. God always answers prayer, and many times his answer is no, and we call that no unanswered prayers. At least he has said no to most of my prayers, and that is an answer. You know, friends, God's no's are always for our good. At that time, it seems terrible because we expect God to fall in our scheme of things. We fit into God's agenda, not vice versa, friends. Do we think we can change God by prayer? God has already made his plan. He foreknew, he predestined, Romans 8:29 onwards. And he has all the information about us. Neither can we tell him anything in our prayer, for he knows everything. The primary purpose of prayer is not to change God, not to change things, but to change ourselves to fall in line with God's will. Verse 23, 24, and 25 now. How many wrongs and sins have I committed? Show me my offense and my sin. Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy? Will you torment a wind-blown leaf? Will you chase after dry chaff? Will you torment a wind-blown leaf? Will you chase after dry chaff? Very candidly, Job is asking for a showdown with God. That is what he wants. He wants to know how many sins and iniquities he has, so he will understand why he is being treated as he is. He says that he is just like a leaf that has been driven to and fro and that has been stepped upon, a wind-blown leaf. Then in verse 27, you fasten my feet in shackles. You keep a close watch on all my paths by putting marks on the soles of my feet. You notice how God watches our paths by putting marks on the soles of our feet. So man wastes away like something rotten, like a garment eaten by moths. Man rots away. Job feels that he is just rotting away. He cannot see any point to his suffering at all, fastened his feet in shackles. Job is going down. Job is actually nosediving, hitting rock bottom from such a high summit to a point of hopelessness, of emptiness, despondency, gloom, and even doom, maybe. This is also true of many great men and women in history. What would your words be, friends? Would they be words of hope or words of hopelessness? May God continue to speak to you.